You have your one friend who's like sort of into it, who you say, hey, come over here and can you set me up? Right. But if you're inside Web3, you're like, well, this is the future. It's so obvious. It's so superior in so many ways. But if you're outside Web3, it's not at all obvious. Right. And so in this regard, it feels very eerily reminiscent of the formative stages of the internet. And it's easy to romanticize, right? Like, hey, it must have been great to build internet stuff in 1995, 96, 97. But actually, it was kind of lousy
Yeah.
because everybody thought you were weird, right? Nobody wanted to talk to you, couldn't get meetings. So when you did, no one was buying anything because they thought this stuff was super strange, right? And it seemed, when it all exploded in 99, then it seemed really obvious, but it took a long time to get there. And I think we're seeing many of the same things happen. It's been a little bit different. Each one is its own unique thing, but I think many of the same macro secular trends are at play at Web3 as we're at play with Web 1.0.
What are some of the, thank you for that, in-depth response. I love to learn a little bit of, the background and how things are built and how it's conceived, especially when it's reminiscent of something that we're dealing with now today. But you said that, when you're in Web3, it makes sense that this is the future of the internet and technology and how things will be distributed, communicated financially, and in terms of intellectual property as well. What are some ways that you see, or what I guess is the long term of Web3? What is it being built as now? And where do you see it moving forward to in the near future?
So it's always hard because it was hard to predict the rise of social media at Web 1, right? But you could sort of see, so, what's the big thing about Web3? It makes value programmable, right?
Mhm.
And so value can be money, value can be identity, value can be titles, all these sorts of things, which up until this point haven't really been transformed by digitization. That the way that money and credit card works today is virtually indistinguishable than how it worked 25 years ago. And so, what Web3 technology represents is a fundamental reimagining of what value is and how value can move in ways that don't require any or don't involve centralized intermediaries. So you can move value around without anybody in the middle basically keeping track of things or telling you can and can't do things. So today, if I want to do a credit card transaction, there's a centralized entity that has to make sure that I have a valid credit card and can authorize payment and does a whole series of checks before that payment goes through, even though it happens quite quickly. There's many actors who need to all give a green light before that happens. But if I pay you in cash, right, there's nobody I got to talk to. I just hand you a $20 bill and you take the $20 bill and move forward. What Web3 does is make all value exchange much more like cash transactions, where they're peer-to-peer with no intermediary, and they can be of arbitrary size. They can happen incredibly quickly, and they can happen with basically zero cost. I mean, there's some cost involved, but it has all the same effects. It makes value programmable and reduces the cost of distribution to approximating zero. And, it's funny, like today, I make this statement, look at this junk on Web3. People don't want all these crazy things, crypto punks and bored apes
Yeah.
and scams. They want structured financial products from financial institutions who they trust. You're like, really? Because I don't know anybody who's really happy with their savings account at 0.01% yield, right? When you
Right.
can do DeFi and you can get, many times that, orders of magnitude more yield than that. And so this is part of what's happening. And it turns out that just like you and I may have very different content needs, you and I may have very different financial needs as well. And in the current regime, there's not enough granularity to service us with, our unique requirements and unique capabilities. But when you go into a world where value is programmable, when you go into a world where distribution costs go down to zero, you can have an infinite number of financialized products and financialized offerings that anyone can use. That can be wildly effective and wildly transformative. So, one of the things I like to say is, what's the definition of being rich?
Mhm.
And my definition of being rich is when your money makes money, right?
Yeah.
Rich people don't spend the money they earn, they invest and they live off the yield that generates. Well, the problem with this is, first off, to be rich, by definition, you need a whole lot of money to start, which
Yeah.
most people don't have. And then two, you need access to specialized services and specialized knowledge that most people don't have access to. And that Web3 breaks all of that down, where your money can make money at $10 or $100 or $1,000. And anyone who's sufficiently curious can get access to these various forms of yield aggregation techniques. And look, for me, $100 earning 10% yield is not that life changing. But if you're in a developing country, if $100 represents, maybe an annual salary for members of your community, and you can now yield through mechanisms that are totally open source, 10% on that. And you could do that as a kid, as a teenager, and you can accrue that over a lifetime. it can really be significant. It can be life-changing for all sorts of folks. And so this is another really great thing about Web3 is that it's massively more equitable, massively more inclusive. It's a global phenomenon. And just anyone who's sufficiently curious can participate equally. It doesn't matter where you live. It doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter your background or your income level. There's no barriers to entry other than sufficient curiosity and experimentation. And so I think this is really constructive for the ecosystem and ultimately constructive for society. Global society got rebooted through the internet. Like it's just, we live in a different reality than we lived when I grew up. And I think that rebooting process has happened again. The whole world went from being offline to being online. And we're at the beginning of the whole world going from being off chain to being on chain. And that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, so much possibility within having the, connectivity of different countries and different individuals who are building and producing. I run a company, Auto Labs, and we connect, developers to startups, and even just that process of allowing people in their current community to build products is, it's going to lead to so much growth and change within startups, within engineering in its entirety, that as a profession, but really allows so much possibility and so much ability for those individuals to then influence their local community, which, I'm excited about every day. And so, definitely, Web3 and cryptocurrencies is making it easier to pay those individuals, but also to have these transactions and grow. Tell me a little bit about Blocknative. Where did the idea start? You said, you were working at Cisco, you were in leadership and leading a team there. And then you saw this Web3 junk and you were like, I don't know, nobody wants this, but I think there's some value here. And I think this is the future. What inspired you to start Blocknative?
Well, so I had a few friends who were already building the category, and this was early 2018 was sort of the big CryptoKitties boom. And so this is the first NFT project and the first sort of thing that seemed to go out, sort of demonstrate the power of Ethereum as a smart contract platform and sort of indicate a broader cultural opportunity. Believe it or not, in 2017, 2018, the team started building NFT collectible games, which was sort of a crazy thing at the time. And later was prescient. But I had run the global design thinking program at Cisco. I wrote a book on it. I trained tens of thousands of people on a methodology. And as a result of that, I'm a big believer in user testing. So we're building this game. I'm pretty new to the ecosystem. And I said, let's do some user testing. Let's see how this goes. And let's just say it was the worst user testing I've ever seen in my career. Like the feedback was terrible. And the response from the team really surprised me. They said, oh, all that feedback, that's not us. That's just Ethereum. If that people don't know how to use a wallet or what a wallet is or what transactions are, things like that. And like, that's all, just table stakes, right? It's no different for us than CryptoKitties. And I was sort of surprised by this because we're trying to build sort of a mainstream game involving social media influencers. So look, if no one can use this thing, it's going to be a big problem. And look, could we do something about it? And the team at the time said, oh, maybe we could. So we built these two little widgets. One widget that basically detected if a user had a wallet, and if not, helped them get one and configure it. Another little widget that basically, whenever you did a transaction, look at the mempool and would tell you what was going on with your transaction. Because at that point, MetaMask, which was really the only town, had a lot of what I call ghost clicks. Like click and something would happen, but it wouldn't give you any feedback. And the user testing revealed that was really problematic. So we pretty quickly build these little widgets. They're not very sophisticated. They take a few weeks to build. We go back into user testing, and the user testing is way better. I go, great. Okay. Solve that problem, moving right along. And started to meet a bunch of folks in the Web3 community, starting to get more out there, started to show them what we were building. And the story I always say is, I think I had 6 meetings in a row where the call went like this game you're building, but that widget, that's super cool. Can I have that? That little thing that can transaction status, that's amazing. Can I have that? And so this is very much my entrepreneurial journey, which is you build stuff, put it out there, and then you listen very carefully to the feedback and where there's engagement. And so what we learned was there was a whole bunch of interest and need for developer tooling, for infrastructure that would smooth out the user experience and provide insight into transactions. And so we wound up pivoting the organization. We named it Blocknative at that point. It was called Blocknative before. We stopped development of the digital collectibles game, or we started, focusing on infrastructure, and we just continued that pattern over and over again. We'd show it to people. People would give us some feedback, give us some ideas, maybe fund some development of some stuff. And now we operate, a global real-time platform that's sort of unlike anything else in Web3. And, we serve 2,000 transactions per second, 24 hours a day on our gas platform today for for providing gas prices to the ecosystem. So it's a pretty interesting journey that we've done, but it's just been this process of build, release, feedback, refine, build, release, feedback, refine, which I always recommend to technology entrepreneurs is tighten that feedback loop as much as you can, because that will get you to the right track.
Yeah, I love that. I've heard countless times, and it seems like a common theme with a lot of founders is having the, I don't know if it's courage or just, stubbornness to continue pushing products out there, getting that feedback and really evaluating it in terms of what does the customer need or what does the user need so that you can better serve that purpose. It's a lot of people think it's foresight or predicting markets. A lot of times it's just understanding who you're affecting, your user base and what they want. And you have to be extremely stubborn in that pursuit, because that, like I said, the feedback loop gets tighter and tighter and tighter until you really are adopting technology that they're excited about and excited to use. Tell me a little bit about Blocknative. You said you work within, mempools and you help kind of smooth out transactions and you reduce gas fees and things along that nature. Describe the technology a little bit more for our listeners to kind of understand its impact.
Yeah, of course. So we specialize in what's known as pre-chain data. So everything that happens in a Web3 ecosystem between a transaction being an idea and going on chain. And it turns out that I always ask people, if you've ever done an Ethereum transaction, you press submit, you wait for a while, and then it either confirms or fails. Yeah. And go, have you thought about what's happening while you're waiting? And they go, not really. And it turns out a whole bunch of really valuable and interesting things that are actually pretty hard to observe for your typical developer and user, and are quite important for determining settlement, time to settlement and terms of settlement. So what we do is we operate a global data infrastructure that provides programmatic access to this data layer inside Web3 ecosystem. So today we support Ethereum, Polygon, Gnosis chain, BNB chain, Phantom, and Bitcoin, and we're always in conversations with other ecosystems to add support as well. And these ecosystems, build themselves as sort of fundamentally open and transparent and a level playing field. And that's true, except for the pre-chain layer, that this area, there is no truth, there is no consensus. There is actually no one mempool. There's actually thousands of unique copies of the mempool all over the world, and it's this real-time environment. So the data volumes are very high. The data is quite sparse. And so for your typical, builder, your typical user, they don't really have any access or mechanism of working with this data. And the challenge is there are very well-funded operators out there, often quite sophisticated trading operations that do. And so they have access to this data set. And by the way, if you think about on-chain data as the truth, all future truth exists in the pre-chain layer somewhere. So if you can capture and organize and make sense of the pre-chain layer, you could see the future of truth to clarity. And so you wind up with haves and have-nots. You have people that have access to this data and know how to work with it. You have people who don't. And it's like playing soccer against a team that 5 seconds sure it'd be pretty frustrating because you never touched the ball, right? And so what we do is we sort of operate as a public good, and we provide access and tools for using all this stuff. On top of this, we provide the best gas estimation in all of Ethereum and all of Polygon. We provide real-time transaction simulation, so you can give us an unsigned transaction and we'll return to you, if this transaction would be submitted right now, here's what would happen. So you can understand if it's going to fail, or you can understand what's your settlement, or you can even prevent yourself from making a major mistake and losing a bunch of funds. We do all sorts of value add things on top. And we provide a range of libraries. If you use Curve and connect to the wallet, that's Blocknative technology that provides that. If you get gas estimation from any of the major wallets, they're often incorporating our data. The Ethereum Foundation itself is a customer of ours as well. And so this is what we do. And by the way, you can go to our website, blocknative.com, and we have a product called Mempool Explorer. There's a button, it's in purple, I forget what it says now, but you can say, check out the Mempool, and you can actually get a live view for free. You can click on the quick start buttons and you can see things going on in the Mempool as we speak. It's live, it's real, it's public access, but you can upgrade accounts, you can pay, and get more data, get faster data, things like that. So anyways, that's what we do at Blocknative. And I encourage anyone who's interested to check on our website.
Yeah, no, thank you for that explanation. And I'm curious, you said you're working with some of the major coins out there. You're working with some wallets as well.